Do you know the true story of your last name? Ever thought about where your last name comes from? I mean, really thought about it? Sure, you've probably heard some family tales, or maybe glanced at a genealogical chart. But have you ever questioned if those stories are the whole truth? Or just half-baked myths passed down like an old game of telephone? Let's dive deep into the murky waters of surname origins, shall we? Spoiler alert. You might find out your last name has a more scandalous history than you'd like to admit. What's in a name anyway? Shakespeare may have asked, what's in a name? But when it comes to your last name, the answer might be a lot more than you bargained for. Last names weren't just plucked out of thin air, you know. They often reflected a person's job, where they lived, who their parents were, or even some embarrassing quirk. Take the name Smith, for instance. Seems innocent enough, right? Well, back in the day, it indicated someone was a blacksmith, a crucial yet gritty job. But what if your name was Drinkwater? Yep, you can thank an ancestor who probably lived near a clean water source. Not so bad. But what about Drunkard? No prizes for guessing what that family member was known for. You see, last names were the original social media profiles, telling everyone in the village who you were, what you did, and sometimes where you stood on the social ladder. But here's the kicker. Over time, these names often morphed into something completely different. So, while you might be walking around proudly with the last name Knight, your ancestor might have been a squire who got a little too ambitious. Funny how history works, isn't it? Family legends. Fact or fiction? Ah, the good old family legend. We all have them. You know, those stories passed down from generation to generation, usually involving a great-great-grandparent doing something heroic or scandalous. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those tales might be about as reliable as a three-legged stool. For example, many people believe their last name connects them to nobility. Oh, we're descended from royalty, they say, with a twinkle in their eye. But let's be real. If everyone who claimed royal blood actually had it, we'd be knee-deep in kings and queens. The truth is, your last name might have more humble origins. Maybe your ancestors were farmers, soldiers, or even outlaws. And that's perfectly okay. In fact, it makes your family history even more interesting. But hey, don't let a little thing like reality get in the way of a good story. Maybe your great-great-grandfather wasn't a duke, but wouldn't it be more intriguing if he were a notorious pirate? Just saying. The global mashup. With globalization, migration, and good old-fashioned love stories, last names have been mixed and matched like a DJ at a wedding. Ever wonder how an Italian last name ends up in Japan? Or how a distinctly Irish surname finds its way to Brazil? Or Ghanaian bearing the name Smith, Blankson, Wisdom, Quist, etc. as surnames? That's the beauty of our interconnected world. Our last names are just as much a product of history as they are of human nature. But with this global mashup comes the risk of losing touch with the original meaning. Names that once had clear, specific meanings get twisted and turned until they're barely recognizable. And yet, they still carry the weight of generations, like a family heirloom passed down with no one quite sure where it came from. Do you really know your last name? So, do you really know the true story behind your last name? Or have you just accepted the tales you've been told? Maybe it's time to dig a little deeper, ask a few more questions, and uncover the real history, warts and all. After all, your last name is more than just a collection of letters. It's a link to your past, your heritage, and maybe even a few family secrets. But be warned, you might not like what you find. Your noble lineage could turn out to be a myth. Your great ancestor, a bit of a scoundrel. But isn't that the fun of it? Life's too short to be boring, and so is your family history. So, what's the deal with your last name? Is it rooted in nobility, or does it have a more colourful past? Either way, it's your story to tell, or rewrite if you like. Your last name is a badge of honour, a reminder of where you come from, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of where you're going. Embrace it, question it, and most importantly, have fun with it. Because in the end, the story behind your last name is as unique as you are. FAQs. 1. Can a last name really change over time? Absolutely. Spelling variations, translations, and even clerical errors have changed last names throughout history. What started as Johnson might have become Johnston or Johnson, depending on where your ancestors ended up. 2. Is it possible to trace the exact origin of my last name? It can be tricky. Some last names have clear origins, while others are lost in the mists of time. A genealogical deep dive might give you some clues, but be prepared for some surprises along the way. 3. What if I find out my last name has an embarrassing origin? Wear it with pride. Every last name has a story, and even the most embarrassing ones add colour to your family history. Plus, it's a great icebreaker at parties. 4. Can my last name tell me something about my ancestors' personalities? Sometimes, yes. If your last name is derived from a profession or a nickname, it might give you a glimpse into your ancestors' personality or role in society. But don't read too much into it. People are more than just their last names. 5. Is it possible to change my last name if I don't like its history? Of course. Many people change their last names for various reasons, including marriage, personal preference, or to honour a different part of their heritage. Meanwhile, I'm on my way to discovering the brain behind my surname, Abugri. Your name, your choice. See you in the next article.